Hi everyone, I'm Afra Shemza. I'm a multimedia artist based in the UK and Portugal, and I'm really delighted to be here with you today for the Sustainable Art Forum. In my talk, I'm going to share with you my journey for sustainable art practice, and I'll highlight my different artworks and projects and share my kind of methodology for implementing this. I don't really profess to be an absolute expert in the field. I think that I'm definitely still learning, and I'm hoping that through this talk that we can all sort of learn together as well, as I think that's really important for sustainability. So I mentioned I'm a multimedia artist, and that means that I combine traditional sculpting techniques with the latest technology to create my artworks. Handmade and bespoke interactive circuits are embedded within the pieces, and this creates artworks that respond to the viewer or the space around them. And I tend to work in series. Each series has a different kind of aesthetic quality to it and also a different theme. So I work with themes from migration to climate change, and I work with many different materials too. Now, I think it's important to mention that I do work with technology, and I really feel like this is something that's been a kind of constant question for me in the last many years of my practice. Should I or should I not work with technology? How might I use technology more sustainably? And so I decided that I wanted my artwork and practice to be a reflection of society and how we are operating. And I don't think that we are going to stop using our smartphones or laptops anytime soon. So I wanted to continue to use technology in my work, but to think of a way in which it could be more used in a more sustainable way, thinking about its longevity, its lifespan, how it can be easily serviced, using readily available parts, etc. So I just wanted to mention that before we get started about technology. So in 2016, it was my first foray into using sustainable materials in my diffuser series. And here I used recycled light fittings that came from a local office building. They were throwing them out. And I recycled the metal parts of them and used them to create different compositions for my light sculptures. Now, these works weren't necessarily about climate change or about sustainability. They were more about their sound reactive. So they have a microphone inside them and they light up when a viewer or somebody makes sound. And it was more about this playful, interactive engagement between the artwork and the viewer. It wasn't until 2019 when I'd been started thinking a little bit more about the materials that I used to make my work. In my personal life, I'd started to implement zero waste, so trying to reduce as much waste as possible from my day-to-day life, like my groceries, etc. And I started thinking, oh, I'm not doing that with my artwork, so how can I do that more with my art practice? So I was supported by the Arts Council of England with a grant and formed a project called Solution for a Sustainable Art Practice. In this project, I took my two core materials, wood and plastic, and learnt new skills and techniques for how to swap them for sustainable alternatives. So in the wood workshop, I looked at how I can turn reclaimed timber. I learned from a master craftsman, Archie Hands, about how to do traditional woodworking, plane and thickness, reclaimed timber, and use that to make new artworks. What came out of that was an artwork called Current Climate, and this was actually my first work about the climate crisis. Current Climate is a data visualization artwork that visualizes, it's connected to news websites from 4 different countries in the world. And when in the news climate change is mentioned, the artwork will show that in the coloured lights. And so it's meant to show where and when we're talking about the climate crisis. In the plastic workshop, I looked at how to recycle my own plastic waste and turn that into sheet material to make my artworks with. And I was inspired by an organisation called Precious Plastics from the Netherlands. And they have these open source methodologies and machine designs where you can learn about how to recycle your own plastic waste. So do check that out. So just to share with you the methodology. So in the plastic workshop, I worked with two different types of plastic, but I'll share this one with low density polyethylene. Low density polyethylene is things like bubble wrap and plastic bags. And these plastics are not very easily recyclable already. So I thought it was a really exciting thing to try and work out how I could work with these materials that really are trash. So I took the bubble wrap and plastic bags, I put them on a baking tray and I melted them in the oven. I then put the material that had been melted into a ball and then put it inside a hydraulic press to press it flat and to cool it down. And what came out of that were these beautiful marble-like tiles. And I'm really excited by imbuing this really waste plastic with a value. And here you can see some close-ups of the tiles and what they look like. It's kind of like marble. And this made some of my artworks like compositions 1 to 4, which you can see here. And using recycled plastic is something that I've been working with since 2019 in my work. And I'll talk you through that a bit more as we go. So in 2021, I was commissioned by Canary Wharf Arts and Events for the Summer Lights Festival. And for the festival, I wanted to create a large-scale public sculpture that highlighted the rise in sea levels due to global warming. And so this is where the ocean rise design came out. Now, I unfortunately couldn't use my small-scale technique for recycling my own plastic waste because this was a very large public sculpture commission. And so for this piece, I collaborated with an organisation and they created this larger plastic recycled material for me. And the artwork is made from this sustainable material, this recycled plastic and locally sourced cedar wood. And it's mixed reality. It has a soundscape that accompanies the artwork that the audience can access via a QR code. And the sound is waves crashing on the shore. So when you plug in your headphones, you're kind of cut off from the city life and it gives you a kind of moment of calm to contemplate the climate crisis and kind of be more surrounded by nature. So that was the idea with the artwork. Because I hadn't been able to produce my own recycled plastic for that larger sculpture, I really wanted to develop some techniques for some larger scale plastic recycling. And so I applied to the Arts Council of England for a grant and was awarded a grant for my Ocean Rise project. So here I was artist in residence at a local makerspace called Spacer. And I had many different partners who I ran events and published talks and writings with as well to share this methodology. So here you can see how I was kind of scaling that up a bit. So again, I was inspired by Precious Plastics and they have these open source designs for machines for recycling plastic. So I was able to buy a large heated press to make sheets, plastic sheets, and a shredder machine as well from their family. And I created these new artworks that were all based on ocean sea levels rising data that NASA has available on their website. So at the time in 2022, the mean global sea level rise was 10 centimeters. So in these small sculptures, they're kind of showing that, visualizing that data. And in these artworks, I'm actually using the graph data as a light piece that's kind of going from one course to the next. And then, of course, we've got the recycled plastic. And with this, I wanted to highlight our plastic pollution problem and the relationship between plastic pollution and the climate crisis. And in the UK, I don't know what it's like in Taiwan, but in the UK, only 10% of our plastic actually gets recycled. So we think that we are doing our bit by throwing our plastic in the recycling bin. But unfortunately, only 10% of that gets recycled and the rest is shipped to other countries or burned. So we really need to start thinking about this ourselves. So I also, working alongside this project, and in that project, I'd started running plastic recycling workshops for young people and adults. And I thought this was a really great way to engage people in these topics. But what I thought was, it would be really interesting to actually work with young people or members of the public and actually co-create artworks together. And so this meant not just doing plastic recycling workshops, but actually working with a group, a community group, to design, and actually they would create parts of a sculpture, parts of a whole piece. And I was lucky enough to be commissioned by Milton Keynes Islamic Arts and Culture for the Sustainable Geometry project. So in this project, I worked with young people from a school in Milton Keynes, and together we made these plastic recycled panels with the techniques that I've been showing you. And then those panels were cut out into these geometric shapes. And then I combined those geometric shapes to make this sound reactive artwork. And you can see here, each tile was actually created by one of the students. So together we make a whole. And I think this is a really nice metaphor for how we talk and think about the climate crisis. Whereas one people can start making their step towards a sustainable outcome, whereas together we can really start to make change. So that's kind of the idea with these co-creative projects. Another commission that I was lucky to receive is called from Ocean Rise again, with the Oslo City Art Collection. And in this project, I created a plastic recycling workshop, but it was actually making jellyfish out of plastic bottles for a much younger age group. And in this workshop, the young people created their jellyfish out of plastic bottles, and then we created a kind of diorama with torches and gels, and it was very exciting working with the young people to do that. And whilst we were doing the workshop, I actually brought my husband, Manuel, who's the sound artist, Modely TV, with me. And during the workshop, we spoke to the students about the climate crisis and their hopes and dreams for the future, and we recorded what they were saying. And after the workshops had taken place, Manuel and I went on a residency, and we recorded sounds of the fjord and bird sounds and lots of natural field recordings. And we combined those recordings with the children's voices, talking about their hopes and dreams for the future, to create another soundscape that would be shown alongside a new public sculpture. And the public sculpture, like Ocean Rise that I did in the UK, was made with recycled plastic. And in this instance, I worked with 2 local partners in Norway. And we worked with Ocean Eyes, who recycle fishing ropes from the north of Norway, and they turn them into these pellets. And then I worked with a local non-for-profit called WeCycle. They created these molds and put the pellets inside that, and then created the panels that were made for the sculpture. And the idea about this was really to try and create a best practice guide for creating sustainable practice and sustainable public art, basically. And I wanted to create an artwork that is not only made for the public, but also with the public as well, and has an impact on local organisations and communities. This is the artwork installed in Toyenbadet in the park, and it's a mixed reality sculpture again. and it asks the viewer to contemplate their role in the current climate crisis and its impact on future generations with the soundscape, with the young people's voices in it as well. So as part of my kind of role with sustainability, I have been publishing and sharing my ideas, like in this talk, with people across the world. And I've contributed a chapter to the Artist Manual, which is a book by Dorling Kindersley, and various articles and papers about sustainable art practice. I found it's absolutely amazing in this field how willing people are to share their knowledge and their expertise with others. And so I think that's really important and will help us to move towards a greener future. I've also created a resource called Artology, www.art-ology.co.uk, which is an artist resource for artists working with technology who want to be more mindful of their environmental impact. So you can take a look at the website. There's some helpful tips and tricks for how you might implement this into your own art practice. I also have been a consultant this year on the Gallery Climate Coalition's Artist Toolkit that's just been published. So do check that out. That also, it's a very, very extensive resource for artists who would like to be more mindful of their impact. I'm really excited to share with you some research and learnings that I've had most recently in the last kind of year or so. So I was lucky enough to take part in an artist program called Creativity and Climate Change with Spacer. And alongside the artists there, I took part in some workshops, and one of which was about regenerative practice. And sustainability is a really great first step towards creating a greener future. But regenerative practice looks more holistically about how our well-being is intrinsically linked to the work that we do and our natural surroundings, and thinks about how we can work with these kind of ideas and thoughts. And so I just want to leave you with a few sort of questions. So it's a great first step to swap the material that we're using for a more sustainable one. But what if the material we used instead actually improved biodiversity loss or improved the lives of an entire human community? What if our personal well-being and the well-being of our team was just as an important metric as how many people we reached with the project or how much money we made? I think these are really important questions, and these are things that I'm now exploring within my practice and also within my life. Because of this residency project and because of the things I've been learning about regenerative practice and the way in which I've been operating with this journey of sustainability, it's quite difficult to operate in the societies that we inhabit and implement these kind of more holistic ideas. And so my husband and I have actually relocated ourselves to Portugal. We've bought 2 acres of land and an abandoned farmhouse to renovate. And our idea is to live more in harmony with nature and to start really implementing these more holistic views, live with nature, reduce our waste, reduce our consumption. And I'm incredibly excited to see what's going to happen to my artwork. I think there'll be the use of more natural materials, thinking about invasive species, thinking about working with local communities more, bringing in the co-creation and the best practice for sustainability. So I just wanted to leave you with that because these are the most exciting things that I'm working on at the moment. I've started a Substack. You can find me at afrashemza.substack.com, and it's a kind of newsletter publication platform where you can find out about our Portugal diaries and what we're doing month to month over here in Portugal. So do sign up.